What I discovered after his still haunts me every night. My name is Daniel. I'm 34 years old, an architect by profession, and until recently an unremarkable man living a quiet life in Boston. I never had much family. My parents died in a car crash when I was a teenager, and I was raised by my Uncle Thomas. He was a reclusive man, a retired professor, who lived in an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town. He wasn't warm or affectionate, but he gave me a roof over my head and paid for my college. I owed him more than I ever told him. Last month, I received a call from the police. Uncle Thomas had died. Natural causes, they said. Heart failure. He'd been dead for at least a week before a neighbour called it in. I hadn't visited him in years. When I arrived at the house, the air felt wrong. The place was dusty, lifeless, and yet something about it made my skin crawl. The will named me Sol Air. I was to inherit everything. I thought it would be simple. Clear out the junk, sell the house, move on. But on my second night there, something strange happened. I was organising some boxes in the study when I noticed a breeze coming from the bookshelf. A breeze from inside a sealed house. I tapped the wood panels and one sounded hollow. I pushed and the entire bookshelf swung open, revealing a narrow staircase spiralling down into darkness. No blueprints ever showed a basement. I'd helped remodel this house with him when I was younger. There shouldn't have been anything behind that wall. I should have called someone. A friend, the police, anyone. But curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight and descended the stairs, each creaking step sounding like it echoed for miles. The air grew colder, heavier. The smell was metallic sharp, like rust or blood. At the bottom, I found a corridor lined with old, rotting bookshelves and strange symbols carved into the stone walls. There was a door at the end, made of thick, blackened wood, with a rusted lock hanging broken from its latch. I opened it slowly, and what I saw inside will stay with me forever. There was a room. Circular, windowless. In its centre stood a massive desk lit by a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. On the walls, photos. Dozens of them. Of me. From childhood to now. Some were taken just days ago. That's why I realised someone had been watching me. And it wasn't just my uncle. I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I scanned the room. The walls were covered with more than just photos. They were a grotesque collage pieced together with clippings from newspapers, faded receipts, and torn letters all connected with red strings like some twisted conspiracy board. There were photos of me at places I'd never remember being, from angles I didn't recognise. Faces, blurred and distorted in the background, but they were there watching. I stepped forward slowly, my feet unsteady. My hand trembled as I reached for one of the photos pinned closest to the door. It was a picture of me as a child, taken on my birthday. But I remembered that day vividly. I had spent it with my parents before they died in that accident. I hadn't seen my uncle there, and yet there he was looking in the shadows, barely visible, but unmistakably him. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A small, leather-bound journal lay open on the desk, its pages worn and yellowed. I couldn't resist the urge to open it, and as I flipped through the pages, I saw that the entries had been written by my uncle in a hurried, frantic hand. But it wasn't just mundane ramblings. These were notes about me, my every move, my habits, my friendships. Every detail, every thought I'd ever had in passing was documented. Even dreams I had mentioned to no one, dreams about places I'd never visited, people I'd never met. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. How could he have known these things? I had never told him any of it, and the last entry chilled me to my very core. The time has come, he's ready, everything is set, the final piece will arrive soon. The words seemed to burn into my eyes. Ready for what? What was he preparing me for? The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I could feel the weight of the room closing in around me. I didn't know whether to run or stay. But the nagging feeling that I had stumbled onto something far beyond my understanding pushed me deeper into the madness of this room. I turned around, my mind racing for an explanation, but the door I had come through was gone. It wasn't locked, it wasn't even there anymore. The walls had closed in, leaving me trapped in a place that didn't belong. I was no longer in my uncle's house. This place, it was something else. And then I heard it. A voice, faint but unmistakable, whispering from the darkness behind me. "Welcome, Daniel." My breath caught in my throat. The voice, deep and familiar, sent a wave of icy fear through me. I spun around, trying to locate the source, but the room was empty save for the unsettling collection of photographs and scattered papers. My mind raced, my heart pounding in my chest as I struggled to control my breathing. Was it my uncle? Or something else? Something more sinister. I moved towards the far end of the room, my footsteps heavy on the cold stone floor, as if the air itself was pressing against me, urging me to turn back. But I couldn't. I had to know what was happening. I had to understand what this room, this hidden place, was all about. The journal in my hand felt like a weight too heavy to bear, its pages still trembling beneath my fingers. I tried to focus on what it was trying to tell me. But the more I read, the more I realised that I wasn't just a subject of my uncle's obsession. No, something far darker was at play. Each page spoke of rituals strange, disturbing rituals meant to prepare someone to shape them into something greater. It spoke of a hidden order, a group that had been watching me for years, orchestrating events in my life. The words seemed to blur together as if they were written under duress. But there was one constant, the reference to the arrival. I had to stop. I couldn't comprehend any more. My head felt like it was about to burst. But that's when I noticed that the floor beneath me. It wasn't solid. It was soft, almost like a rug, and as I pressed my foot down harder, I felt the unmistakable give of something hidden below. I crouched down, my heart racing, and pulled at the edge of what looked like a rug, except it wasn't a rug at all. It was a trapdoor. With a force I didn't know I had, I wrenched it open. The hinges screamed in protest as the door gave way, revealing a narrow, spiraling staircase that descended even deeper into the ground. I had come this far. What was one more step? The air was even colder now, if that was possible. A dark, suffocating presence seemed to loose from the stairwell, pulling at me like a magnetic force. I knew deep down that whatever was waiting for me below, whatever my uncle had been preparing for me, it was going to change everything. I took a deep breath and descended. The stairs felt endless. Each step took me further away from the world I knew, the world that made sense. And when I finally reached the bottom, I was greeted by something that would haunt me forever. A chamber. In the centre of the room was a large, circular stone table. It was covered in symbols I didn't recognise, their meaning lost to time. And on the table lay something wrapped in a cloth. With shaking hands, I pulled the cloth away, my heart sinking as I gazed at what lay beneath. A human figure. Not a corpse. Not a mannequin. A person. Alive, but barely. It was my uncle. His eyes were open, though they were clouded and unseeing, his body frail and covered in scars. He was breathing, shallow in labour, but it was clear he wasn't here. Not entirely. Daniel, the voice whispered again, but this time it wasn't just from behind me. It echoed from every corner of the room. You are the final piece. I staggered back, my mind unravelling. The ritual. The arrival. It wasn't about me becoming something they had wanted me to finish what they had started. They had wanted me to become him. I could barely keep my hands from shaking as I backed away, but the whispers continued, growing louder, more insistent. Something terrible was about to happen. Something that had been set in motion long before I even stepped foot in this cursed house. I couldn't breathe. The weight of it, all the room, the table, the breathing body of my uncle was suffocating me. The whispers grew louder and clearer, an endless chant coming from every direction, pulling me into a vortex of madness. The wall seemed to close in, as if the very house was alive, watching me, waiting for something. You are the final piece, the voice repeated, now no longer a whisper, but a command. I stumbled backward, my hands frantically searching for anything to hold on to, but there was nothing. I couldn't think. I couldn't reason. My brain was short-circuiting, trying to make sense of the insanity unfolding before me, but it was impossible. My uncle, he wasn't dead. Not truly. He had become something else. I turned away from the table, my eyes darting around the chamber in panic. The door was still there, but the darkened hallway beyond seemed like a far-off escape. My legs refused to move, rooted to the ground by a force I couldn't understand. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something else. A small, weathered book, half hidden beneath the folds of the rug near the far wall. My heart skipped a beat as I stumbled toward it, drawn to it as if it held the answers I so desperately needed. I opened it. The pages were covered in more of the same symbols from the table. But this time, they were arranged differently methodically, like instructions. The book wasn't just a record of what had happened, it was a manual. A blueprint for how to finish the ritual, to complete whatever had started when my uncle first entered the room. My hand shook as I read. The words blurred in and out of focus, but one line stood out, clear as day. The body must be transferred, the soul must be bound. What did that mean? Transfer the body? Bind the soul? Was my uncle the one who had been preparing this all along? Or was I the one meant to take his place? My thoughts spun, each one more insane than the last. Then I heard it. A noise behind me. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, fingers scraping against stone. Slowly, I turned, dread creeping up my spine. My uncle, no, it couldn't be him. He wasn't moving. He couldn't be moving. But there he was. His hand twitched, then his fingers curled, gripping the edge of the stone table. He lifted his head, his eyes glazed and unfocused, but his lips formed a grotesque smile. You were almost there, Daniel, he croaked. You've always been meant for this. I backed away, the cold stun of the walls pressing against me, but he was coming closer now. He was standing. He was alive. The air grew thick with tension, and I felt as though I couldn't breathe. His movements were jerky, inhuman. His body was trembling, but there was an undeniable force pulling him toward me. And behind his eyes, those cloudy, vacant eyes, there was something else. something dark. The room felt like it was warping around us. The walls seemed to stretch, the symbols on the floor growing, shifting. The chamber, once small and confined, now felt like it was expanding, stretching into eternity. I could hear the whispers again, louder than before. They were no longer distant, they were inside my head. "You must finish it, Daniel. You must take your place." His hands reached out for me, and I recoiled, my back pressed against the stone wall. His fingers brushed against my face, cold as death itself. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't do this." But his smile only widened. His voice, now deep and resonant, echoed through my mind, chilling me to my core. "You already have." And just like that, the world around me seemed to collapse. The chamber disappeared, and I was falling into darkness, falling into the void. I don't know how long I fell. Seconds, hours. Time had no meaning anymore. The darkness wrapped around me like a heavy, suffocating blanket, and I couldn't tell where my body ended and the blackness began. It was as though I was weightless, drifting through an endless void. And then, suddenly, I stopped. The air shifted, and I found myself standing there, stumbling on solid ground. I could feel my legs shaking beneath me, my body trembling with fear and confusion. I wasn't in the chamber anymore. I was in some other place. A place I didn't recognize. The walls were made of stone, but they were smoother than any stone I'd ever seen. The floor was covered in a strange, pulsing light that seemed to breathe in time with my own heartbeat. And the air, there was no other way to describe it, felt wrong. It was too thick, too heavy. Every breath I took felt like it was laced with poison. I looked around frantically, trying to make sense of my surroundings, but everything was distorted, twisted. Shadows shifted, moving in unnatural ways. There were no windows, no doors. It was like I was trapped in some nightmare, a dream where logic had abandoned me completely. Then I saw it. In the center of the room stood a mirror. At first, I thought it was just another illusion, another part of the distorted reality I was now trapped in. But as I moved closer, I saw that it was real, too real. The reflection in the mirror wasn't mine. It was someone else. It was my uncle. Or at least, it looked like my uncle. But his face was twisted, contorted, his features warped into something unnatural. His eyes, those vacant, soulless eyes, were fixed on me, and I could see his mouth moving, whispering words I couldn't hear. His lips didn't move in sync with the words, and the sound of his voice came from all around me, as if his presence filled the entire space. "You've crossed over, Daniel," the voice echoed, deep and hollow. "You've become part of it now. There's no going back." I took a step back, my heart hammering in my chest. The mirror's surface rippled like water, distorting my reflection, pulling me toward it. And then, just like that, the reflection in the mirror began to smile. It was the same grotesque, unnerving smile I'd seen before. It wasn't just my uncle anymore. It was me. The figure in the mirror, my reflection, was reaching out toward me, its hand stretching through the glass. And before I could react, the mirror shattered with a deafening crash. But the glass didn't fall to the ground. Instead, it dissolved into the air, swirling around me like a vortex of sharp shadows, pulling me closer and closer to its center. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't my own. It wasn't anyone I knew. I turned around to see who or what was behind me, but there was nothing there. Nothing but a shadow, dark and formless, swirling in the air like smoke. I felt my body freeze in place, my heart stopping in my chest. And then I heard it again. That whisper. "You're part of us now, Daniel. Welcome home." Before I could scream, before I could even move, the darkness swallowed me whole. I woke up in the same room, or at least, it seemed like the same room. But this time, everything was different. I wasn't alone. The air was thick with tension, and the room seemed to pulsate, the walls alive with the same symbols from my uncle's hidden chamber. The shadows now had form. They were people, figures dressed in dark, tattered robes, their faces hidden beneath hoods. There was a heavy, oppressive silence hanging in the air, and I felt like I was drowning in it. And then I saw it. At the far end of the room was the stone table again, the same table I had seen in the chamber. But this time, there was no one on it. Instead, there was a figure standing by it, facing away from me. I couldn't tell who it was at first, but then they turned, and I realized it was me. The real me. Or maybe not. It was impossible to tell. My reflection, or whatever it was standing there, its eyes cold and unfeeling, just like my uncle's. But there was something else in those eyes. A knowing. A hunger. The same hunger I had seen in my uncle when he smiled at me with his twisted lips. The figures in the room shifted, moving closer to me, their heads tilting in unison, as if waiting for something. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice hoarse and shaky. The question felt so pointless, like it didn't even matter anymore. Everything had lost its meaning. One of the figures taller than the others stepped forward, its face hidden in shadows. Its voice was familiar, but distorted, as if it had been altered by some force I couldn't understand. "You are the one who will bring us the new dawn," it said. "You will lead us, Daniel." The room seemed to close in around me, the shadows pressing against my skin. I wanted to run. I needed to escape. But I was trapped. And the realization hit me hard like a slap to the face. There was no escape. This was my fate now. I wasn't just my uncle's heir. I was the one who had been chosen to take his place. The one who would carry on the legacy of darkness and power that had been building for years. The transformation had already begun. I could feel it. And I was powerless to stop it. I couldn't breathe. The realization that this had been planned for me, that everything in my life had led to this moment, hit me like a tidal wave. The world around me blurred as I struggled to maintain control, but it was useless. This wasn't just about my uncle anymore, it was about something far bigger. Something that had been waiting for me long before I understood what was happening. "You're not the first, Daniel," the voice from the tall figure spoke again, slow and deliberate. "There were others before you, they failed, but you're different." I felt my legs buckle beneath me, and I fell to my knees. The floor seemed to move beneath me, as if it were alive. The air around me was thick, charged with an energy I couldn't comprehend. It buzzed with a low hum that seemed to vibrate deep in my chest. The figures in the room moved closer, their presence overwhelming. I could feel their eyes on me, studying me, waiting for the moment when I would give in. My reflection, the one standing by the stone table, wasn't just a mirror image. It was a version of me that had already succumbed to this fate. It was a version of me that had already embraced the darkness, already taken his place in the order. "What is this?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" "You've always been a part of us," the tall figure responded. "You just didn't know it, but now you understand." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But my body felt heavy, like I was drowning in quicksand, the weight of this new reality dragging me further down into the abyss. Suddenly, everything shifted. The room around me seemed to distort again, the shadows bending and twisting in unnatural ways. I could feel the same pull I'd felt when I first opened the trapdoor, when I first descended into the depths of the house. It was as if the very walls were closing in on me, drawing me closer to my fate. The symbols on the walls began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter, until they were burning into my retinas. The stone table began to hum, the sound vibrating through my entire body. And then I saw it. A shadow, standing in the center of the room, hovering above the table. A shape that wasn't quite human, but not quite anything else either. It was shifting, its form constantly changing, like a nightmare made flesh. It had no face, no recognizable features, only an aura of power so immense that it took my breath away. "This is the true power, Daniel," the tall figure said, its voice now booming in my head. "This is what awaits you. This is the legacy of those who have gone before you." The shadow in the center of the room stretched out its tendrils, reaching for me, and I could feel its coldness seep into my very bones. I knew, with horrifying clarity, that this was it. This was the moment of transformation. This was the moment I would either give in, or I would become something else, something far worse. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream, to tear myself away from this nightmare. But the pull was too strong. The power was too overwhelming. "You belong to us now," the voice echoed, the words vibrating through my skull. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for what was about to happen. And then I felt it. A cold, sickening sensation spread through my body. It was as though my soul was being torn from me, pulled apart, piece by piece. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I could only feel it, the dark energy flooding my body, consuming me, transforming me into something I didn't recognize. I could feel myself slipping away. The last remnants of who I once was, Daniel, the man who had been an architect, who had lived a quiet, ordinary life, fading into nothingness. I had become them. And just like that, everything went black.